and welcome to the Service Operations Podcast. I am your host, 𝗤𝗏𝗀𝗏. Our guests are from different industries and functions. They will share their experience, strategies, and the changing landscape to help you take the service operations of your business to the next level. Hi Ranjit, nice to have you on this podcast, Service Operations Podcast. Actually, we are seeing each other after like a real long time. I think maybe more than 10 years for sure. For the listeners, Ranjit Nair is the CEO of 𝗤𝗏𝗀𝗶𝗵 Solutions. This is into the space of social media analytics and consumer insights. So Ranjit, tell us about what you did before you started 𝗤𝗏𝗀 and how the journey of 𝗤𝗏𝗀 has been.
Thanks a lot. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of this
My
podcast.
pleasure.
I think, like you said, we're seeing each other after close to 10 years, and even now it's only virtually. So to begin, tell you a little bit about my own journey. Uh, I started off as a PhD student in the US at the University of Southern California, doing my PhD in computer science, focusing on artificial intelligence. And post that, I worked as a research scientist at Honeywell Labs in Minneapolis. But my heart was always keen on being an entrepreneur and doing that in India. So I moved back to India towards the end of 2006 and set up Germinate soon after that. And the idea behind Germinate was to take ideas which could be either from the business on the business side or from the AI research side, and try and find a marriage between the two so that we're using AI to solve real commercial problems and germinating new products. So that's the word. The word germinating was where the name Germinate came from. Okay. And so that was really with the intention behind the company. In the initial years, we were focused more on building products for our clients, right? And so it was more in an IT services mode, but we were focused always on products themselves and not just maintenance services projects and things like that. And we wanted to make sure that there was AI in every one of the products that we worked on. And while this journey was going on, working for other companies building their products, we were constantly on the lookout for our ideas that would result in our own products that we could ourselves make and take to the market. I think around 2009, early 2009, we realized that the power of social media had increased tremendously. And on the one hand, you had market research firms who were, trying to call people to do interviews and things like that. And the very people that they had to talk to were clamming up. So people like you and me, we don't like taking calls when someone says, "I'm calling from XYZ research company, and can you answer a few questions?" We might be completely free at that time, but we will still say we're busy and we refuse to take part in these surveys. So, on the one hand, the people who needed to be responders on these surveys were clamming up. On the other hand, these same people were happily writing on social media in public, talking about their brand experiences, talking about complaints, talking about product experiences. So, when we looked at that, we realized, this is really an opportunity here because on the one hand, you have um, people really struggling to get these answers. On the other hand, you have people freely talking. So what we said is, it's kind of like the opposite of a survey, because in a survey you ask questions and people respond only to those questions, whereas here on social media it's almost like people are writing what is top of mind for them, right? So we said let's get into the space, and when we got into the space, we realized that the applications were much wider than just market research, and we started looking at various other use cases, right from social media research, of course, but also online reputation management, content analysis, social media customer service. We realized that there were so many applications, and we started building expertise in each one of those.
I think the question then was that how do we get what's being written about us in the social media space, how the data should be collected and presented, be engaged
Yes.
in, yeah.
So the initial application, or the most common application in the early days was where companies were saying, "How do I protect myself?"
Yeah.
Right? So they're saying, "My reputation is important. I've done a lot to build my brand, and it can be easily ruined by someone saying something negative on social media, and that's spreading." So it was kind of a fear mindset and that risk mindset, which was there in the initial days. And so you're exactly right that when we started out, we were really thinking about where all can I get data from? Where can I capture those conversations that are happening about me, about my brand? Can I get that in real time? Can I flag off anything that could hurt reputation and so forth? But with time, brands have themselves evolved. They realized that they can't stop people from writing, so or saying, or expressing themselves. So brands have become, I would say, more mature in participating in that conversation, and also using those conversations as a source of insight.
Yeah.
So that's really been our journey, where we started off with building products for others, then realizing this particular opportunity, starting out first with some simple use cases like protecting brand reputation, and now diversifying into multiple other such use cases where the underlying data hasn't changed a whole lot except for new sites coming on board.
Where is your, what is your area of focus at this moment in terms of, activity?
So I would say that the biggest area of focus is around social media customer service, right? Where we have realized that people are looking at social media areas which continue to be important, like online reputation management and social media research. But the one area we're seeing a lot of traction is social media customer service. And what we're finding is that
Okay.
consumers are looking to social media as their first port of call. They are no longer, many of them are not keen on calling up the call center, being put on hold, etc. And they realize that brands are paying more attention to what is being said on social media, and they get faster response and faster resolution when they write on social media. So it's not just people who want to rant, but also people who want genuine service, who are writing to brands on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and various other such places, and are expecting brands to actually pay attention to those conversations and reply.
Why do you think this is happening? I mean, why does the customers or the consumers not want to go to the company but want to put it out on social media? I mean, is it because of the effort involved in reaching out to the
Yeah,
company?
largely because of, I think it's largely because of the effort of calling up finding the company's call center number, then calling up, being put on wait, then reaching someone, maybe not reaching the right person, and being given the runaround. So they've experienced that with multiple companies, and then they realize that if they write on social media, they get faster resolution. So then they've started doing that to for everybody.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then when they get a good experience with one or two companies on social media, they get very, very fast replies. Then that becomes the benchmark, and they expect all companies to be equally fast.
But it's changed the way a consumer reaches out to the company. And now, while I'm talking to you, I'm also realizing that you have a wealth of information by virtue of the work that
Sure.
you do. How do you ensure that this is noticed by the company and that they do something about it? Is that arrangement there, or is it that you just give information and leave it to
No, so
them?
it's I think we're very conscious about it in our very first interaction with the client itself, to make sure that the insights we provide, the reports we share, are going to get consumed not just by our direct point of contact, but at multiple levels within the organization. So,
Okay.
and we're fine giving a detailed report, a detailed report to an analyst, and then creating a very succinct, very short, a set of slides, maybe a set of 5 slides, which is for senior management. So it's the same content, but then it's summarized well, and the real gist of it is provided to senior management. And this way, what we can do is we're doing. We're showing that we're conscious of management's time, and at the same time, if they want the details, they're also provided. Um, from the very start, we do this. From the very first meeting, we make sure that we've understood what the client's requirements are, that we know what actions they're able to take, and they're also aware of what kind of insights we're providing them and how they can use that. And so that's at the start. And then with every monthly meeting, we take feedback from them in terms of, okay, are our reports useful? Can you tell us about some decisions you made using our analysis? And so we're also constantly getting feedback from them and learning from that and improving our own analysis and insights.
That's very interesting. Actually, I'm again and again, thinking that you really are a storehouse of knowledge because there's so much that, So have you tried some kind of benchmarking exercises? Because you would be dealing with, companies in the same industry.
Done a few benchmarks for a few industries like insurance, banking, and hotels, etc., where there are a large number of brands which are consumer brands in engaging
Yeah.
sectors, and we then benchmark them on various metrics. So right from what is consumer sentiment about each of those brands to how well are they responding, how customer centric are those companies in terms of how fast do they reply to their clients, how with what kind of quality measures are they actually replying, right? So that we use this both as a uh, as information for our clients so that they know how to get better, but also when we're approaching new
Yeah.
customers, we can tell them that this is where you stack against your competitors, and we can help you get better on these metrics.
And you've been like in this space for really long now. 15 years is a long time. So, which is your most successful, insight implementation? I mean, what do you think was the best thing that ever happened?
So I think it's tough to pick out point out just one, but I'll kick you through a few examples across different companies, because there are some companies who use 80% of our services, another might use 20%, but they do a really good job using that 20%. Right? So it's really across different companies. For example, uh, the most the first example I want to take is in terms of social media customer service. So there was this large private bank which before they worked with us, they had a turnaround time which was in several hours. Right? So so if any consumer wrote on social media, by the time an actual reply got to them, to that consumer, 4 5 hours on average would pass. uh, so what we were able to do was we were able to first tell them, what, we're going to bring it down to under an hour, and we said that, and then we looked into the data, figured out what kind of where actually their speeds were getting, where the turnaround time was getting dragged down. Right? There were simple things like, for example, we realized that just by increasing the work hours by a couple of hours each day, we were able to respond to many more complaints on the same day itself rather than it going the next day. And because we realized that a lot of the complaints were coming in when people were on their way back home after they'd finished their workday, right? So doing simple things like that, we were able to very quickly respond to these customers. We were able to improve we added many more ways of responding, added many more much more better training of the people responding so that they have an in-depth product knowledge, so a lot of things can get resolved in the first response itself, so that it doesn't have to go back to a customer service team at the back end who then suggests a reply and then it gets posted. So with that, we brought the time down to under an hour. Today, it is at around 6 to 7 minutes in terms of the median turnaround time because of this continuous. Yeah. So that's one example. Another example is from a cosmetics company. It's a very different field, right? And this company wanted to come up with a new type of hair dye, right? So um, the hair dyes which are in the Indian market at that time were typically powder-based hair dyes or liquid hair dyes, and both were kind of messy to apply. So they wanted to introduce a foam-based hair dye, but they had not yet figured out, they had not yet done their research, their market research in terms of what the market needs in terms of the product features and so forth. A typical way would be to do a focus group discussion, call a bunch of potential users in the room, talk to them, understand their experience, and so forth. But because there were no competitors who had this product in India, they would have had to do this in developed markets outside of India. So we said, you know what, let's do it a little differently. We will identify 15 such products across the world. We focused on six different markets, and we picked up all the conversations that were happening around foam-based hair dye for these 15 different
Okay.
brands and help them understand what do the consumers see as the pros and cons of each of these brands. What do they think about how long the color lasted? What do they think about how easy it was to apply? What do they think about the packaging? What do they think about side effects, color
Mm.
choices, and so forth? And so then when we gave them this report, they were like, wow, you got this all from social media at a fraction of the cost, a fraction of the time, right? And they were able to use this
Yeah.
in actually coming up with a concept of their product without having to actually develop something, without having to do this expensive market research outside India. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. So just tell me now, you are able to gather information which people write about on social
That's
media.
right.
Okay. Uh, so that means there is still some portion of customer feedback where companies need to go to their consumers, right?
So what I described so far is something we call passive listening, right? It is people are talking about it. We are almost like a fly on the wall, just passively listening in, and people are talking about what is top of mind for them. Now, often what companies need though is they need answers to very specific questions, right? It's very a very pointed question. So we do this in a couple of ways. One is we partner with some primary research companies, and we have them conduct a search with consumers. And this is done in one of two ways. Either it is done at the start, right, where they first do the primary research, understand the broad areas, the broad topics where they want deeper understanding, and then we do social media research on those subtopics. Or alternatively, we do a broad social media listening and understand the main
Yeah.
themes of the conversation, and then primary research is done on specific subtopics where the customer needs more insights. The other way we do it is where we ask these questions on specific social media sites, and we say we're interested in people's opinion on these topics. And then when people give their answers, we collect it using the earlier approach of passive listening. But here, this is what we call active listening, where we are actually posing questions on social media and then getting answers from consumers all over the world.
Yeah. So you have, the distribution and the reach on the social media. So you're able to cut it from all angles, listen as well as, yeah, as well as answer. And also the hybrid model, which is asking of questions, the voice asking of questions or writing
Correct.
emails. My space really is this whole area of the consumer and more of service. Okay. So you as a passive listener, not specific to any company, but as a passive listener, you also absorb the
Sure.
insight. So, according to you, what do you think? The companies should do that they are not doing today, or what should they focus on that they are not focusing on today?
Companies are doing a really good job, right? So it's not that I want to put. I wouldn't say that the whole industry is lagging behind on these areas. But I think one area where I feel that companies can do a better job is in making sure that the replies that go out are not very monotonous and robotic. A lot of companies use a bunch of templates, right, to reply to consumers. And when the same templates get used again and again, the consumer feels that they're talking to a robot and not to a human being, right? So
Yeah.
I think that a large part of a lot, with better training, with less reliance on these fixed templates, uh, the actual consumer conversation can be much more intelligent, and a lot of the issues that consumers have can be responded to and resolved in the first go itself. Right. So I think that's one thing which company. There are some companies who are making strides in this, and they're saying, you know what, it will take us a little bit longer to train this, or we need a higher caliber of person to actually reply. But they're saying it's worth it because then we have an actual brand connect with the consumer, and we're able to possibly convert that person who may have started out as a detractor, but we're able to convert that person into a brand advocate. So this whole s- the
Oh,
whole
okay.
the mentality of such organizations is that we want to treat every possible opportunity of engagement as an opportunity to build a new brand advocate. And
Hmm.
so then customer
Hmm.
service is not seen as purely like a cost center, but you're seeing it as a way of building loyalty, building advocacy. And I see more and more companies are now beginning to realize that it's not just about replying to people, but it's about connecting with people.
According to you, I mean, or in general also, this has increased. Is it increasing over a period of time? Because it's not just, from a reputation perspective, as we
Right.
started off, that people shouldn't talk bad
Right.
about me. It's becoming more acceptable that, yeah, it's normal for a consumer to write on social
Yes.
media. So when we say social media, we talk about mainly Twitter
So
or the discussion
yeah, I think
forum
our
review
definition of
sites.
social media is very broad. So we're actually thinking of it as we think of it as any user generated content forum, right? So it could be a
Okay.
Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, etc. But it also includes blogs, forum sites, consumer complaint sites, uh, review sites like a Google Business Reviews, or reviews which are on sites like say a Play Store or a App Store. So all of these are places where consumers are expressing themselves, providing feedback, and it's up to companies to actually pay attention and listen across all of these platforms, reply where they have to, but even if they're not able to reply on that platform, get the insight from there, understand what the consumer is actually saying, and then evolve accordingly.
What else do the companies use these insights or
Right.
information for?
So companies are their focus in terms of what they're listening to is changing a lot, right? While initially it was only about
Okay.
let's listen to my own brand, that then broadened to let's listen to what people are saying about my competitors, right? Then they said, okay, let me also listen to when I'm running a specific large campaign. Let's understand what the feedback on my campaign is, so that I can make changes to my campaign in real time. So if someone's given me some really good feedback about a campaign, something's not working, not connecting with the audience, I can actually change my videos. I can change my the dubbing. I can change a whole bunch of things around my campaigns in real time, in kind of real time, while the campaign is still live. Okay. Next thing a lot of people do
Okay.
is they're saying, is it a source? Can I use social media as a source of leads? So when people are, yeah.
Oh,
So lead generation is another very strong use case. Um,
how does that
so it
happen?
happens in broadly two ways, right? One is where you find consumers who are directly asking for your services without necessarily mentioning your brand, right? So they could be, for example, uh, we were working with a life insurance company, and they were keen on capturing these kind of leads from potential investors in their investment related products, right? So what we did was we went to specific forums which are meant for investors, and we actually created accounts on behalf of this company, not pretending to be other customers or anything, but with their actual brand name, right? And whenever
Okay.
anyone asked, should I go for XYZ life insurance or ABC life insurance, we were able to answer as that brand, saying, uh, this is we also offer life insurance, and you can get it on these kind of terms. You can buy it online here. And when they realized that this brand is actually participating, because we were not only promoting ourselves, we were also answering questions that they had, which were around providing help around the whole life insurance space. So they saw us as a valuable partner on those sites, and we soon found people actually following those links, buying life insurance because we had recommended it. And soon we found even people recommending it to others. So they would buy it themselves, and then they would, before we could even reply, they would recommend saying, use XYZ life insurance because those guys are very prompt with their service. So life,
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
first way, where it
yeah,
is very, very direct. The second way is a more indirect way, where we realize that for many products, whether it's insurance or even could be home services or various other such products, there are certain triggers that make us want to buy that product. Right? It could be a life event, like for example, sticking to life insurance. Right?
yeah.
Getting married
Mm.
is a reason why someone says, okay, now there's one more person in my life who matters. I have to take a life insurance policy for myself or for my spouse, or a child being born, suddenly they realize, oh, I have more responsibilities, so they feel it's a trigger for buying life insurance, right? So we can identify
Yeah.
what these triggers are, and then we find people who are talking about those triggers or those life events happening to them, a move to another city, changing houses, getting married, getting a promotion, a child's birth, and then linking those. And then we have intelligent ways of joining that conversation, where it doesn't seem like we're hard selling or we're trying to sell something just because that event has happened, but we join that conversation, try and take it offline, and then potentially sell something to that person as well.
Which are the industries or which are the areas where, who are more sensitive to what is happening on social media? So one thing comes in mind, in the mind is finance, but yes, I know many other instances where even I myself may have used social media when I was not able to reach,
Yeah.
through a normal channel.
So,
So the moment you tag the company on Twitter, someone is likely
yeah.
to attend to you. But which is the so is it only large companies, or are there smaller companies also who are sensitive to the what's happening
So
on
it's
social media?
really not to do with the size of the company. It's got to do with the sector. Okay. So if a company,
Okay.
so it's first of all, it is largely B2C. There are some good B2B examples, but largely it is B2C companies, consumer facing companies, which use social media very well, or they need to use social media very well. They tend to be industries within B2C where the product connect is very strong, and it's not like a one-time purchase and it's bought and it's done with. Like, so for example, it's not like something
Yeah.
like say a cherry blossom shoe polish, right? Because even if there's something wrong with your cherry blossom shoe polish, you'll just buy
There's
another
this.
one, right? So it needs to be a very
Yeah.
engaging product, like you mentioned, like financial products, like a hotel stay, like products which have an after sales element, like say automobiles and so forth, where there is a large where consumers, it's not just about buying it, but it's also about using it and issues that come up while they use it. So these tend to be the sectors. But it's an interesting question because we're seeing a new kind of company for whom this is absolutely critical, and that's D2C companies, right? Direct to consumer companies.
Okay.
And as of 2021, we had reports are that we have about 600 D2C brands in India whose lifeblood is digital and social, right? So these are brands which have been built. Their brand building is also being done digitally online. Their all their customer engagement is online. Their selling is online, and finally, customer service is also online. So because these brands are,
Yeah.
they actually live in social media. Uh, for
Mm.
them, a negative comment on social media can be extremely harmful. So for them also, this is extremely crucial, and they may not be big brands, but for them, social media listening, social media research, social media customer service, all of these are very critical.
So that means, in short, what you're saying is that wherever the consumer goes, that's where the company would be interested in knowing, what's happening. So since most of us are on social
Right.
media, I think that's where the research and the
Right.
insights
And
happen.
especially in the last 2 years, right, since the pandemic, when people
Hmm.
have been working from home and they're online all the time, there's been a huge increase in social media usage at all times of day by people, because they're just in front of their computers, they're at home. A lot of the other things which they would have been able to do outside the home suddenly was not allowed. So we found this big increase, and that we feel that didn't stop with things opening up. that it actually led to some changes in consumer behavior where they became much more reliant to these online digital social kind of mediums and channels, and hence it actually changed consumer behavior, and we're seeing that change continuing. And people and so the importance of social media just increased for companies, and that continues to be the case.
Speed is a very important thing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if I'm asking for information, how long does it take for a company to get this kind of information? Like, is it online, some system integration required? How does one access this kind of information?
There are two main kinds of research, right? One is where we are trying to uh, impact a decision which is not real time, that they're trying to decide on a new product or some change in strategy. Now, people don't change their strategy in real time. A company would probably change their strategy maybe twice a year or something, right? At most. So, for those kind of decisions, an integration is not required. We're not. Speed is still very important because you want to be faster than your competitors, but it is not. It is not. You're not going to behave in a tactical manner about it. Right? However, on the other hand, there are many other kinds of decisions which are extremely real time, like being able to resolve someone's an issue someone has, or being able to deal with something that's happening during a crisis. Right. So we're very tactical, and we want very real time kind of information. Now, that's where it calls for actually being integrated both from a process standpoint as well as from a technology standpoint. Now, coming to the first part, the when you're trying to influence some kind of strategic kind of decision, these kind of the way the typical methodology is where we first understand the main keywords that are being used in conversations relating to that data that is relevant. We then identify what are the main sites where those conversations are happening. If those sites happen to be sites which we're not crawling yet, for which happens very rarely, but it can happen, then we would write additional crawlers for those sites, we would write scrapers for those sites and get the data. Then once the data is fetched, it then gets analyzed using machine learning and natural language processing algorithms, which help us understand what topics people are talking about, what are the main themes of the conversation, what is the sentiment that's being expressed on each of those themes, who are the people who are speaking, what are their characteristics, and so forth. And then once we have all that information, that data, that analysis done at the level of individual posts, then we understand trends in the data, we understand patterns, we find anomalies. And finally, there is a layer of recommendation where, basis that analysis, we're saying, basis our understanding of that client's domain, we're able to give recommendations in terms of how they should change their strategy. Right. So that kind of exercise would typically take about 3 months, 3 weeks.
Can you share some example about some strategies to get an idea?
One of the most common ones is the new product development kind of strategy, right? Where, yeah, you have an idea of the space you want to come up with a new product, but you want to understand much more in terms of um, um, what that product should be, what its characteristics should be, and so forth. The other is around communication. So you're trying to modify your communication strategy. So you want to understand how are people reacting to my existing communication strategy? What are they saying about it? How are they reacting to me? What are my competitors doing? What is their communication strategy like? And basis that, we're able to formulate a new communication strategy.
How do you work on
So
that?
that is really, there are two parts where we work on. The first is around customer service, where we're saying that when something is fetched and someone has a query or a complaint, we want that to be a ticket in the company's the company's CRM system or ticketing system immediately, right? So if I have a complaint on social media, on Twitter, for example, can it automatically create a ticket in my Telisma system or my
Yeah.
Oracle system over there, right?
CRM.
So that's one kind of integration where companies are, so it becomes very seamless because the customer service team, which is at the back end, gets to know all these things happening on social media. They're able to reply to it, and their response is also fed back. So the person who's replying on social media also knows what the backend resolution was, and they're able to respond to the customer very intelligently on social media, right? And so that's the other kind of integration that happens. And then we also do integrations which are more like data integrations, where we expose the data from our APIs on to BI dashboards that the customer has, or to a command center which we might build for them, which could be like a war room kind of situation around a crisis or around a new campaign and so forth.
What is the future, and how, I mean, if you look at say 3 years or 5 years down the line, where do you see this going? Because if I just go back, I remember identifying keywords, that if this word is good, means positive, this word means
Right.
negative, I mean, that was a basic
Yeah.
starting point. So now we've come along way with machine learning and artificial intelligence, and lots of things may be happening, you know, in the systems itself.
Yeah.
So where do you see this going forward? In terms of both, one is in terms of how this kind of work will happen, and second, also in terms of how will the consumer behavior change on social media? Will it or will it
Sure.
not?
2010, when we just started, a majority of the conversations that were happening on social media from Indian users was happening in English. And maybe there would be a 5% of conversations which were in regional languages. Right? And so that would be
Huh.
all the regional languages put together, right? So including Hindi, Marathi, Bengali, the South Indian languages, all those language, every language in India that people speak, that would account for about 5% of the people. But English speaking people uh, are a minority in the country. And
Yeah.
so social media wasn't a reflection of that. And people, even when they didn't know English, they would try to write in English. So the complaints were often in very poor English. What we're finding with the increasing adoption of the internet in India, the penetration being so high as it is today, I believe it's uh, close to 60-70% now. Right? So you find that people are writing in their native language very often, both writing with the English script as well as writing in their native scripts. And we find that that ability, so because people are writing in these their own languages, companies need to now be able to listen and understand conversations in those languages. And while majority of the companies still reply in English, or they'll reply in maybe just two or three languages, now companies will have to adapt and will have to start replying in the languages of the consumer. So that is one change in consumer behavior which I think companies will need to adapt to in the future. The other is uh, in terms of things like audio and video conversation. So while uh, today,
Huh.
a lot of social, when you say social media listening, most people are thinking of text analysis, right? But with increasing increasing communication happening on video, right? It is important to be able to analyze both the images, the frames in the video, as well as the audio of that video, to be able to understand what consumers are saying. And I think that is the uh, from a technical perspective, that's going to be the next area where a lot of companies will have to focus. So so one, of course, is the being able to do it for regional languages, and the second being able to look at
Yeah.
other media like videos and audio and so um,
It's very interesting because uh, we moved from, see, this is, we're kind of moving to face to
yeah.
face
Yes.
communication, because that's what it used to be, right? We would speak to a consumer in the language he knew, in a language that one could best
Right.
explain, and also, the capturing the
Right.
emotions, because that you don't really get it in always in text unless the consumer uses specific words. So, like we are kind of not moving completely there, but through social media we are actually going to be tracking all those things, the voice, the tone, and the body language and things like
Absolutely
that.
right. And there are a lot of sites where the communication is private, so it will uh, we won't ever have access to those. but there is still plenty of stuff, plenty of platforms where everything is happening
Yeah.
publicly. So there is, I don't think we're going to run out of sources of data. It's really about being able to apply
Yeah.
technology smartly, apply human intelligence smartly, so that together with technology and the right analysts, you're able to get those insights that companies really care about.
Hmm. There are two things. One is that individuals want to put out more and more information about
Right.
themselves, and that's what we see. So where they travel, what they eat, what they wear, and who they meet,
Sure.
those kind of things. So I think there's more than enough that will always be available in the public domain, in a way. Yeah. But from the technology perspective, that is, from your systems and processes and procedures, you will need to make a lot of changes then to be able to analyze and this information,
Absolutely.
because voice and video
So
and
I think the in the past, in the early days, you could get by with uh, some smart rules and creating things, an approach like bag of words, which from a essentially it was similar to what you're
keywords.
saying, right? Where you're saying these are negative words, these are positive words. Those kind of approaches
Yeah.
work kind of worked in the early days, but now with more regional conversations, with a lot of messy data, because even when conversations are happening in, say, a Tamil or in a Malayalam or a Bengali or Punjabi, it's not grammatically correct conversations anyway. So
Yeah.
people might be
Yeah.
writing in their own first the native language for them, but they're still not writing in quality language, right? So the algorithms
Yeah.
themselves need to be able to manage this, handle this kind of uh, messy data. And so with the advent of deep learning and a whole bunch of related algorithms, we're finding suddenly that AI is able to um, understand these conversations better, and we're able to do a lot of what we could do, which where we needed rules and bag of words. We're able to do away with those kind of approaches.
I was reading somewhere this communication, that is communication through video. So, do you think it's picking up, and many companies or other companies who are doing it? So, instead of sending a text message, they send audio. I have not heard of, but definitely video messages are going. So, you think that's going to pick up?
Video messages where they reply to customers with
Response,
um, so
responding.
I haven't seen a whole lot of that because it requires a lot of quality in terms of making sure the person who's actually responding is able to do it in a professional way. uh, they have the right recording equipment and so forth, and are able to speak in the way that the brand wants. It could very well be the future, but I haven't seen it in my experience. I've not seen much of it recently.
So it's almost equal to face to face. So I think uh, email and messages give you that little bit of shield where you can maybe be yourself, gives you a little bit of time to search for things and then put them forward.
Right. Could happen on one-on-one communication, uh, but I don't see it being used on a platform like, say, a Facebook or a Twitter or something where a brand will reply publicly uh, using video.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but privately, I'm sure it can work. It probably is a good idea.
It's very interesting conversation with you. I mean, then it gives a whole perspective of what can be done, what is being done in this space, and what the future is going to be.
Sure.
So, Ranjit, do you have any single message that you would like to, give the listeners?
My single message is really that social media is here to stay. Its form may change, right? It might be XYZ platform today, something else tomorrow. But consumers are more and more consumers are going to express themselves on social media um, in their own languages, in their own way, or in video, in text, in various formats. And it's really up to companies to pay attention to those conversations, be part of those conversations,
Yeah.
make sense of it, and then offer better services and better products as a result of understanding the consumers better.
Yeah, what you're saying is absolutely right. Social media is here to stay. Obviously, it is not. I don't think anyone thinks that's going to go
Yeah.
away soon. or ever go away. I think it's become a way of
It'll
life.
evolve.
Evolve. It has evolved
Yes.
so much and so fast in the last few days. Accessibility has also increased, so it's going to be a fun area to to work on for companies. Ranji, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all these valuable insights. I'm sure this will be very useful to the listeners because it's giving away, a little inner perspective of what happens on social media. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you so much for your time. I'm very happy to be part of this conversation. Thank you.